Good morning, February the 17th, 2023. This is the one, the only Sassy Mint, and I'm myself, that's all I can be. And I'm going to read chapter 6, 7, and 8 of Hope's Kiss this morning, followed on yesterday's heels, trying to give it a little bit more movement. So here we are, chapter 6. Carrie climbed onto the transit bus and made her way to the nearest seat before the bus pulled out onto the street again. She dug inside her ear and absently while looking for the houses. Since childhood, she had the fantasy that if she'd grown up in this neighborhood called Sunshine Gardens rather than her real family home in the boonies, life would have been so different. Instead of the rock hard rebellion from her Jehovah's Witness upbringing, and the heroin dependent life on the street in Vancouver, maybe she would have been normal, whatever that meant. Maybe she would not have let the pimps or exes beat on her. She studied her reflection in the window. The face was riddled with lines, especially around the mouth. Her hair was beginning to gray, although she was only 44. Thinking of her youth, she recalled a song her pimp used to say was her song. That tune of the Dr. Hook song went through her mind, the Queen of the Silver Dollar. The words of the chorus were, "She's the Queen of the Silver Dollar, and she rules the Smoky Kingdom, and her scepter is a wine glass, and a bar stool is her throne. And the jesters flock around her and fight to win her favors, and see which one will take the Queen of the Silver Dollar home." She still shook her head to think that the children's writer, Silverstein, had penned these words. She was now really a queen, and a happy one, since she was no longer a slave to her addiction or the myth that she didn't deserve to be happy. In fact, she was very happy, and her wife MJ treated her like a queen. In just 45 minutes, she'd be able to see her beloved. Chapter 7. Gina was not certain if the curtains were closed or not. She had checked twice to reassure herself that she was not being watched. She opened up her laptop and turned it on. While she waited for it to boot up, she studied the small baggie on the desk in front of her that held the quick escape she sought from life. The screen showed the Google Chrome with its saved pages. She clicked on the DA site. It opened to the dark blue background with the large words "checkout time" written in silver across it. She clicked on Home Page. The page revealed too many pictures of objects. There were handguns, bottles of pills, various razor blades, carpet knives, small vials, ropes, bottles of fuel, syringes. Gina clicked on the pictures of syringes. The page displayed step-by-step instructions for loading a syringe and where and how to insert it into the body. She picked up the baggie and opened it. She took out the needle out of the bag and carefully examined it. She looked at the clock on the bottom of the screen. 20 more minutes. 20 minutes to think about what she was doing and why she was doing this. 2 months ago, she'd been going about her regular day at the greenhouse when the phone rang. She could never have predicted how answering that call would alter the course of her life. It was Dr. Smythe's office, something about results of blood work from several weeks ago. The doctor wanted her to come in. Struggling all her life with low weight and anemia, figuring it was low iron again, she never thought too much about the call. As soon as she entered the doctor's office, she knew that there was something serious going on, much more serious than what she'd ever imagined. When he gravely requested she have a seat and went on to announce that she had a maximum of 3 months to live, she was blindsided and gobstopped. 3 months? Not only that, the condition she had would become very painful as the disease closed down her body's systems. There was no cure, and pain management was difficult as well as expensive, especially for someone like herself with no health insurance. For the few days, Gina was in shock. She went through the stages of disbelief and arguing with fate, trying to discover online cures, followed by anger and finally acceptance. But she would not accept suffering. She was not afraid to die, but she would make sure that she was gone before the painful part kicked in. The tiny woman had Googled suicide methods and found this site. At first, she was shocked that there were so many places online set up with this kind of information. But finding this group was a godsend. There was no one she wanted to tell the medical news to because she knew they would try to talk her out of the part about planning to die before the pain kicked in. The first time she chatted with members, she cried with relief, both from finally discussing her pancreatic cancer diagnosis with another person and the compassion for why she would rather die by her own hand than from this disease. All the members of the chat group had signed up to commit suicide at a set day and time. She was only connected to those who shared her date. Some were simultaneous, but others were happening independent to the groups. Each day, each individual chose a time. Gina looked at the clock again. Only 7 minutes to go. She pulled her papers across the table and inspected them. Here was her checklist. She had written up a will. There was not much to leave behind. Her apartment was rented. Her greenhouse business had been repossessed by the bank, although she had been lucky enough to be hired on by new owners. There was nothing of any material value. She'd left her personal effects to the Salvation Army. There was a small insurance policy to cover the burial cost. It was the one payment she went hungry at times to pay because of a fierce pride that wouldn't allow her the possibility of leaving that burden to someone else. She had great friends, but they were all as poor as she was. She refused to be a financial stress to anyone. Did she need to pee, or was she just nervous? What did it matter, really? In a few minutes, she'd be dead, and her bodily functions would be beyond her care or control. It was almost time. She stood up and walked around her apartment. Each room she glanced around, looking for some artifact that she would miss or a piece that others would look at and think of her. She ran her small hand along the shelf that held dozens of horticulture books and felt wistful. All the magical beauty and potential of growth now beyond her grasp. One lone tear fell as she returned to the chair in front of the PC and reached for the baggie. She checked the time, only seconds left. As she injected the nauseous substance into the vein of her left arm, she looked out the window at the cluster of white, fluffy clouds floating in the blue sky. Chapter 8. Carrie sat across the table from her wife in the visitor's room. She tried to smile and look composed, but she was truly pained to see MJ locked up in this place. MJ grabbed Carrie's hand and pulled it towards herself until it touched her left breast, and Carrie pulled it away, horrified. This was how it was between them. MJ was the imp, and Carrie was a straight one, except in the bedroom, where to MJ's delight things often reversed. Trying for levity, Carrie began, "How are you doing? You got a new wife yet?" MJ shot back with a smirk. "Several, in fact. I have a harem in myself. Too bad they're going to be broken-hearted when I leave." She giggled, then switched gears, clutching a handful of her hair. "I'm going to go nuts in here if this isn't straightened out fast." "They took your computer and all your papers. There were U.S. officials in and out of our place for the last 3 days. What in hell could they be thinking? Terrorism. For God's sake, of all things, you wouldn't believe all the paperwork I had to fill out to get here today. They practically wanted me to sign over your car. Oh, and by the way, they've frozen our bank accounts. Something about Homeland Security Act. How in the hell could you be charged under American laws?" Many pairs of eyes had been watching them. Both staff and visitors stared at the two women so openly in love. Some of the observers were happy to see people so comfortable with their sexuality, while others sent dirty looks at MJ, whom was oblivious to everyone in the room except Carrie. MJ had come out very nonchalantly over 20 years ago. She behaved like it was the most normal thing in the world from the start. On the other hand, Carrie had only recognized her attraction to the same sex when she fell in love with MJ. The first few months of their life together had been rough. Carrie was at risk of losing her inheritance by being herself, and the struggles with shame left a dark bruise on Carrie's heart when she was rejected by the church she'd been active in for years. But they had gotten through it and been stronger for it. Carrie had been relieved to learn that most of her friends had already assumed for years she was a lesbian and left her regardless. The PA announced that visitors' period was over. Some partners and family were crying as they said their farewells to the prisoners. Just a moment later, MJ told Carrie that she was to be shipped south. This meant that Carrie would not be able to see MJ again until she somehow got the money for a passport and travel and accommodation required to cross the border. Carrie looked like she'd been punched in the stomach. MJ didn't have the heart to tell her before this, as she didn't want their visit marred by this worry. MJ hugged her wife and whispered in her ear, "Not to worry. It's all going to work out. God is in control." The end of chapter 8. Bye for now.